Hey guys, it's Sandro here, and today's detail is on the Lexus GS350. The owner of the car bought it with only a couple of thousand kilometers on the clock, being only a couple of months old. But the main issue he had with the paint and why it was brought to me was the holograms all over the paint due to some aggressive rotary polishing in the past, mixed in with some light to moderate swirls that just jumped out every time he had the car out on a sunny day. Now, I actually did this job and shot this video quite a few months back, and when I more recently had a chance to look at the footage, I was actually about to scrap the video, simply for the fact that it's just so hard to see the paint's true condition on camera, in relation to both the existing defects and the results I was achieving, as this highly metallic, dark silvery grey colour was just blowing out in the footage. But the truth is that even in real life, it's a very difficult paint to assess in relation to your results, because it's just so great at hiding defects, such as compounding haze, micro-marring, and even the existing swirls and holograms. Add the fact that the paint isn't extremely bad to begin with, and it actually becomes an extremely difficult exercise to make a truly noticeable difference that is going to exceed the customer's expectations. So I decided not to scrap this video, but rather change my focus a little to hopefully make a video that can help some of you guys out in understanding how to assess your results on difficult to read paints like this one, and how to spot things like haze and micro-marring that would be quite obvious on a flat black paint, but are actually extremely difficult to see on a paint like this. Now, although you might not be able to clearly or specifically see the haze in the finish, that haze or micro-marring will inhibit the paint's ability to look its absolute best and have that amazing glow and clarity that you'll hopefully be able to see in the final shots at the end. So as I get to correcting the paint and doing my test sections, I'm still going to discuss the products and techniques, but I'm going to focus more on how to read your results and how to determine what the paint is like in relation to hardness or sensitivity for this particular video. So in this first test section, I'm using a very light and super fine polish on quite a fine polishing foam pad, and I'm also using very little pressure and a short polishing cycle. Being that the defects aren't overly bad, this combination and technique is the least aggressive method that still has the potential to work, especially if the paint is on the softer side. Firstly, by looking at the results, I can see that I've addressed the holograms, and I can also see that I've addressed the haze and lighter swirls, but there's still a few of the more moderate scratches left in the finish. Now, I want to discuss what you should be looking for in relation to achieving the best possible finish and results. When you can't clearly see haze or marring, you should be looking for things like the darkness or saturation in the finish. Hopefully you can see that in this section that I just polished, the paint is darker than the unpolished section, meaning that I've removed the haze as it looks richer and the light bounces off more cleanly. The other thing is using the reflection of your spot beam defect spotting lights to see if it's a sharp circle reflection or if there's a slight cloudiness around the light's reflection which indicates haze. The third thing is analysing the metallic or pearl flakes in the paint. Are they jumping out more cleanly? And can you see them more individually rather than just an overall metallic reflection? These are all things that can really help you assess if you are in fact achieving a better finish rather than just removing the obvious defects and leaving minor defects behind of your own. In the next test section, I'm using the same fine polish, but on a more capable cutting wool pad that'll hopefully be able to address the more moderate swirls that the finer foam pad couldn't remove. For you guys out there that still haven't tried the Rupes yellow wool pads, this is probably the 10th time I'm saying this, but do yourself a favour and give them a go. They are without a doubt the best polishing pad on the market today, with the greatest range of cut to finish of any pad I've ever used. So looking at the results, I can see that I've removed a greater amount of those more moderate swirls with this combination, but comparing it to the last section, the gloss and clarity isn't as good. And although I removed the original deeper holograms, I've actually created some minor holograms of my own. So in other words, the cut is better, but the finish is worse. This also gives me some great information that this paint is rather soft and sensitive, as creating even just minor holograms with a free spinning dual action polisher using a fairly mild combination of products and techniques is only something that a softer paint would leave behind in the finish. So in a third test, I went back to the Lake Country Orange foam pad, but this time stepped up to a more medium cut compound to see if I could achieve slightly more cut but still finish down well. Now the cut was definitely better, but I still wasn't entirely happy with it. And there didn't seem to be any compound induced holograms like the last section, which was great, but there was a slight uniform haze in the finish as the paint looked lighter and less sharper compared to the first test section. For a fourth section, I used the same compound on the yellow wool pad as a direct comparison. Now the actual defect removal was better with this pad, as was the lack of haze and the richness of the paint, but I was still getting just the slightest hint of holograms. So it seemed like I was moving in the right direction and close to a winning combination, but still not quite perfect. It also seemed that the orange pad with a very light polish was finishing best, but just wasn't aggressive enough to remove all the defects that the yellow pad was capable of, but just not finishing quite as well, though still quite close. For a fifth section, I stepped up to a light cutting foam pad, but stepped back down to the first fine polish I used in the first section. Overall, I wouldn't say it was a horrible result, but this particular paint just didn't like this combination, as many of the original defects still remained, and the finish was also one of the worst so far. So sticking with the same pad, but stepping up to a more aggressive compound, I tried a sixth section. Now surprisingly, not only was the cut and defect removal better in this section, but also was the finish compared to the last test section using a finer polish. So why is this? The truth is that as detailers we don't always know why, but for whatever reason the combination of this pad, machine and compound used on this particular softer paint just works better, and it's only something that taking the time to test will reveal. Now after stepping back and reanalyzing the results, it appeared that it was going to be quite difficult to get the perfect amount of cut and that perfect finish with just a single stage of polishing, which is really what this job and costing was timed for. Now I know that in a two-stage process I should be able to get the cut I need using the yellow wool pad with a medium compound and then finishing with the orange foam pad with a fine compound. But quite honestly, it's just going to take too long based on my pricing and deadline. So sometimes you really have to stop, think and go back to the drawing board to find a better solution. Now based on what I've seen in my testing so far, the yellow wool pad has definitely still got the best balance of cut and finish overall, but I just need to get it to finish a touch better to be entirely happy with the results. So without going too far into my second phase of testing, I basically tried the yellow pads with a few more compounds, from slightly heavier ones to more medium or one-step compounds, and finally with some finer polishes. I also played around with the machine speeds, pressure and length of my polishing cycles, all in the pursuit to see if I could in fact single stage this paint without having to compromise the overall results. I actually came really close to using Shell Concepts S20 Black Compound, as the cut was actually great and it was allowing me to work slightly larger areas, which meant I could move a lot quicker. But no matter how hard I tried, I just couldn't finish without that very slight haze that honestly probably no one else would have picked up, but I would have certainly known. But the winning combination in the end was Concours Finesse Polish on the yellow Rippers wall pad. Now I did need to work smaller or normal size sections to get both the cut and finish perfect, and I also did slow my machine speed down, but found that moderate pressure was working a little better than lighter pressure, also using slower arm movements. Overall, it did take a while to find this winning combination, as you can probably see, but compared to having to do a second stage, it was still by far quicker and well worth the time taking to find it. I'm also not saying that this is how you should tackle every job and paint type, as not all paints are as fussy as this one, and not everyone is expecting or chasing the same results. But if you are wanting a no compromise finish, without resorting to sanding or orange peel removal, it's always in your best interest to take your time when doing your test sections, as it can very well save you time in the long run and amplify your results and finish. Another thing that I see a lot, especially as a trainer in my classes, is a lack of consistency from start to finish. You have to accept that we aren't robots and it's human nature to be inconsistent, at least to some degree. But you need to appreciate that it took a bit of time for me to not only find this combination of pad and polish, but also the right technique. So if I start working larger sections to try and save time, and I start to increase machine speeds and pressure, I'm simply not going to achieve the same results, especially on a more sensitive paint like this, and I'll actually start moving in a backwards direction. I bring this up because I see it all the time, where a student starts by working their 2x2 foot section, doing 3 to 4 row passes with light to moderate pressure and so on, but an hour later I come back to see that their section has jumped up to a 4x4 foot section, their polisher is cranked up to full speed, they're using twice as much product, and are covered in a dust storm of dried up compound, with the results on the paint looking absolutely horrific. I understand it's human nature to want to speed things up by working larger areas and using more product and more aggressive techniques, as I did the very same thing when I first started out. But I can tell you with absolute certainty that this sort of practice just slows you down. We don't use these particular techniques and practices to make our lives difficult. We use them because they are at the limit of what our polishing machines and products are capable of. And trying to go beyond that may achieve some results, but they'll never be quality results. I know I've done a lot of talking so far, but I hope at least for some of you guys watching, it was some useful information that can help you out in the future. I'll keep quiet for the rest of the correction process, which should be fairly self-explanatory, using my larger polisher for the larger flat areas of the vehicle, followed by my mini polisher for the smaller and more intricate areas to achieve the best level of correction possible. So with all the correction work completed, it was time to protect the finish using a variety of glass or ceramic coatings. Starting with the rims, they were given another final alcohol-based wipe down before using pyro wool coating to protect them. I've discussed pyro wool coating many times in my videos, but the main reason I really like this product is firstly due to the easy application and wipe off. That's basically a wipe or spray on application followed by a wipe off with your cloth without having to worry about flash or wipe off times. It's really super easy to level down with your cloth without leaving any high spots or streaks, and it's an extremely chemical resistant coating that can hold up to your wheel cleaning chemicals. But just as importantly, it really looks fantastic and does give the rims that amazing glass-like finish. For the tyre dressing, I decided to use Zaino Z16, which is still one of my absolute favourite tyre dressings. It's simply brushed onto the tyre wall, and within about half an hour or so it self-levels and dries on its own, leaving a perfect finish. The front windscreen was also given another IPA wipe down before applying Nova Glass to protect it. As with all quality glass or windscreen coatings, I tend to split the windshield into quarters, as it's best to consecutively apply multiple layers of the glass coating over itself in that section to get the best durability and results before you wipe or level down the finish. I'll also add that I always polish the glass before coating it, as in my experience the coating will last twice as long on well prepared polished glass compared to non-polished glass. For the actual paint coating, the customer decided to go for Nova Pro. Now once again, I don't know how many times I've showed this coating in my videos, but it's a lot. So without trying to be too repetitive, it's a slightly faster flashing coating, but as it was a colder day in Melbourne when I applied it, I was able to work 2 sections at a time before leveling it down, which was about a 3-minute flash time. I wouldn't say Nova Pro is a difficult coating to work with, compared to some others I've used, but it's certainly not as easy compared to something like Nova Evo, which is just a pleasure to use. As far as durability goes, from my own experience, it can certainly last beyond 2 to 3 years, or even up to 5 years if it's applied in multiple layers, though it's just a single layer I'm applying here. It's massively chemically resistant and massively hydrophobic, with amazing self-cleaning properties, but it's also not the cheapest coating around, though you do get what you pay for. From start to finish, this car was about a 2.5 day job, totaling about 20 hours to get it to the level of quality and finish that was achieved, and I hope you'll agree once you see the final shots, as did the owner, that it really looked truly amazing in the end and far better than it ever did from the factory. As always, I really hope you guys enjoyed and found this video useful. Please like, comment and subscribe to this channel to show your support for these videos, and I'll see you guys soon.